Right. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jim Smith. I'm the chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm going to call this meeting to order per our various requirements for virtual meetings. First thing we have to do is start out with a roll call. So Theo Kindermans.
Present.
Elizabeth Akers Moore.
Present.
Is Fatih on? Is Ravi on? Ravi's not on.
I don't believe he's on yet.
Tom is not on yet. Okay, well, Jim Smith, I'm here. Ravi Paya, not on. Okay, well, we'll announce those people as they join.
There he is.
Hi, Ravi. We're doing the roll call. Are you present? You're on mute, but you're present.
I'm present, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we got a lot of people on tonight, a couple of housekeeping matters. The first is that Zoning Board of Appeals meetings are run a little bit like town meeting. We need to, we're recording these, we have to take minutes, so we need to know who you are and where you reside. So when we call on you, if you please provide us with that information. Also, somewhat similar to town meeting, when we go into public comment, which we will announce clearly, if you can address comments, questions to the chair, and then I'll refer them to the applicant or to the town planner or whoever might be answering those questions. We try not to end up in one-on-one debates and discussions across lines. And we also do the procedure of, if there's a lot of comments, perhaps for a lot of people who want to speak, we will tend to collect comments and questions and then refer to the applicant as opposed to having each one of your questions answered individually. So with those kinds of housekeeping matters said, we'll turn to the first hearing for this evening, which is Icon Development for a special permit under section 7.1.3, 7.1.5, excuse me, and 11.6 of the zoning bylaw to demolish the existing 1,035 square foot dwelling and construct, located at 57 Grove Street, and construct a 4,406 square foot dwelling on a non-conforming lot, which is Grove Street. I'll just do one more couple of preliminary things for people on the phone. So the reason that this is before the board is first because we're dealing with a non-conforming lot, in this case, one that is non-conforming as to the total square feet and square footage. This total area of the lot is slightly below what's required in that zoning area. And secondly, that the applicant is proposing to increase the size of the existing dwelling on that property by more than 50%. So with that, who is speaking for Icon Development?
Good evening, this is Bruce Ringwald.
Bruce Ringwald. Okay, great. Mr. Ringwald.
Good evening, Bruce Ringwald from Goldsmith Preston Ringwald, representing Mike Walsh and Icon Development. I'm here this evening to request, as the chair said, a special permit under the sections of the bylaw relative to a pre-existing non-conforming lot. As you mentioned, the existing lot or the existing structure is of 1,000. I've lost my place here. Is 1,035 square feet. It meets all the setbacks. May I share my screen, Mr. Chair?
You may.
Thank you, sir.
Everyone's getting better at that as we go along.
Trying. So this is the site plan. If you can all see that there. This is the existing site, 18,986 square feet. As you mentioned, just about 1,000 feet shy of the 2,000 foot requirement. The existing house meets the setbacks. This house has been left in disrepair for a long time, and has had been the site of a lot of debris collection over the years. The applicant has started cleanup on the site. They've removed the temporary sheds and falling down fences and truckloads of debris from the property. The proposal, as you mentioned, is to construct a new structure, and there's a few misnomers in this plan, in that it says it's a 5-bedroom dwelling. It is not. It is a 4-bedroom dwelling proposed. The reason it says 5-bedroom is the septic system design was designed as a 5-bedroom system, because the proposed house has 10 rooms in it. And as you're aware, under Title V, State Environmental Code, and as well the Concord Board of Health, a home that has over 8 rooms in it, you take the total number of rooms, divide by 2, and round down. So for this home, it would have 2 rooms in the basement, 4 bedrooms upstairs, and the basic living room, family room, kitchen, dining on the main level. So that'd be 10 rooms. So we designed a 10-bedroom septic system. The site is all sand and gravel, had a 2-minute-inch perk rate. It's a fairly small system that is will be located in the backyard. Because of the tree removal policy in Concord, and the protection that must be provided around the trees, that system sits in the back here. There have been some comments that have been made, and so we've made some minor adjustments. And I'm going to bring up a second screen here, if I can pull the right piece in. Did that screen change on your screens as well?
It did not yet.
Is that a new picture now?
I don't think so. Anybody
All
else
right.
seen?
Then let me stop and share again. It differs from town to town as to what can and cannot happen. So I guess I have to stop and share each time. So remind me of that if I jump ahead and I miss something. So this is a labeled here 4-bedroom home. What we've done here is we have moved the home back another 6 feet, put it at the minimum offset to the septic system in the back. So we're now a 30-foot setback from the front versus the 20-foot that is required under the zoning bylaw. This proposed dwelling meets all the setbacks, 30 feet from the front. We have it at 16 from this side, 52 from the other side, 51 from the rear. The FAR allowed on this property is 5,757 square feet based on the formula for determining the max floor area allowed under the FAR. We have in this plan, or in the initial filing, it said that the building was 4,406 square feet. And that's kind of a misleading piece as well, because the attic of this building is only accessible by a pull-down stair through one of the bedrooms, and only to be used for storage and utilities. So in discussions with the building department, we have changed the truss in the ceiling or in the roof to be a V-shaped truss, and made it so that all of the space upstairs would be under 6.5 feet in height, which removes 532 feet from the application. So this is now a 3,874 square foot proposed home under your gross floor area guidelines. This space in here is, again, meets all those setbacks as discussed. We have gone around the neighborhood based upon the assessor's records, and there are a number of facilities on adjacent and nearby properties on lots that are smaller than 19,000 square feet and have very similar sized properties. Next door at 37 Grove Street is a 2,800 square foot facility. Then on 39 Assabet out behind, I'm sorry, at 75, 39 Assabet behind the property is a 3,900 square foot facility without a garage. Our number includes a garage. At 71 Assabet, a 2,780 or 2,800 square foot facility without a garage. At 25 Grove Street, a 2,900 square foot facility, again without a garage on that. So there's a number of homes in the immediate facility on undersized lots, and some of which have obtained special permits in the recent past to do this development, and others that were existing prior to that time. There are some smaller lots with smaller homes, narrow lots that do exist in the area, but there are also some larger homes, but they're on standard size lots, and there was no need for special permit on those that have some substantial size in the immediate neighborhood as well. And I have photos if you'd like me to present those. I have architectural plans, or I can turn it over to you for questions. Your call.
Well, to your presentation. So we're happy to stop there, I think, at the moment, but you may get questions from the board. So just for those on the phone, our procedure is first to go to questions from the board. Then we'll open it up to public comment for the public hearing. But before that, I want to just note for the record that we've been joined by Tom Swaim, who's another associate member of the board. And Tom, if you could just acknowledge that you're here so that we've got that part covered for the record purposes.
Yes, I am here.
Thank you, Tom. All right, so questions from the board for the applicant regarding this proposal.
I have no questions. Jim, I have some comments, but I'll save them. I think for later questions I do not have at the moment.
Okay, fine. Elizabeth, Ravi, Tom, anybody?
I guess, maybe I missed it, but we seem to have architectural plans from November 18th. There was a revised gross floor area submitted on April 14th, but we're saying that the November 18th architectural plans are still representative of what the house will be and look like.
That is correct, sir. The structure within the attic space is going to a triangular truss method, and that triangular truss will take up the space that would previously allowed a 532 square foot, 532 square foot area that had a height of at least 6 feet 8 inches. We're now lowered that down below 6.5 feet by using that truss. So that space was and still would only be accessible through a pull down stairs through one of the bedrooms. It was never intended to be living space, and it made it look as though the house was bigger than it is. So we've reduced that, but the exterior architectural plans would look the same.
Okay, so the roof height, the height of the ridge and is still the same.
That's correct. It's roughly 34 feet.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, and I may, because I came in late, it's possible you addressed it, but are you mindful of the letter sent in by the butters questioning the sizing of the house?
I am.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I am. That was why we have modified the site plan to push it back as far as we could to the septic system in the rear of the property. Um, uh, The building meets all the setbacks. It is well underneath the FAR allowed on the lot by 2,000, just shy of 2,000 square feet. And we're in hopes that by pushing it back a little bit further, we've helped address some of their concerns.
Do you have any, Jim, may I ask another question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Do you have any response to the concern? Because there was a large number of neighbors that would contend, I think, as I read their, the letter, they would contend that notwithstanding you're moving back the house, which I suspect they appreciate, nevertheless will not be consistent with the character of that neighborhood. And I'd just be curious if you have a response to that.
I do. I'm just going to bring up some neighborhood photos. And that's not on your screen, right? So I need to stop sharing and share again. All right, this is the house as it exists today. Another picture of the house as it exists today in the yard. This is a house across the street. This is a house around the corner, similar height, similar area. This is at 22 Grove, and is 2,900 square feet, plus with the garage counted in, as is required by ours. This is the house immediately to the left of the proposed house, the applicant's house. This one is at 3,900 square, no, I take that back, I'm sorry, the wrong one. This one's at 2,300 square feet, plus the garage. This is a house right out behind it on Assabet Street. This is 3,900 square feet without a garage, similar height. This is at 71, 2,800 square feet, similar height, all right immediately adjacent. There's many more, but I didn't thought that was a good representation. They have said in their letter that you know, this is a 5-bedroom home, and I understand that there was this discrepancy because it did say 5-bedroom on the plan. It is not. It is only a 4-bedroom home. It is only living space of 3,200 square feet, but when you add in the garage, it's 3,800 square feet per your guidelines and requirements. And again, it's we have pushed it back as far as we can to stay out of the stupic and to not have to remove additional large trees on the property, which we felt was more important to keep the large trees in the back of the property as part of the Concord green requirements.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can we bring up a plan of the neighborhood showing conforming and non-conforming lots?
Certainly. Would you like me to do that, or do you have one you want to bring up?
Whoever has it. Heather, do you have it, or?
We're agnostic.
Right,
There's Elizabeth's got it. Okay, thank you. Elizabeth, can you remind me which color is which?
Sure. Blue is lots that are non-conforming to area. Orange are lots that are non-conforming to frontage. And pink are the lots that are non-conforming to area and frontage.
So the white or whatever is the the only conforming lots, essentially.
Oh, correct.
Okay, Elizabeth, go ahead.
Excuse me, Elizabeth, if I may, Chairman?
Yep.
The orange you said is non-conforming to just the
Area.
frontage?
Area and frontage.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, no, that's the pink. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
So Elizabeth Akers. Or
Yeah, I mean, this will probably bear on our conversation more later, but the neighborhood's mostly non-conforming is the answer to that one. I think, can you also bring up the elevations for us to take a look at?
Mhm.
I think.
Elizabeth, am I bringing those up or you? I'm sorry.
No, I can get them.
I can do them too. I just didn't know what you wanted.
There you go.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Can you see the whole thing, or do I need to reduce it a little?
Maybe reduce it a tiny. I just can't see that very bottom, but yeah, that's good. Okay, that's helpful for me. I don't really have any questions, Jim. I just wanted to take a look at those
Okay,
together.
great. Excellent. Anything further from the board? And otherwise, we're going to open up the public comment. If you can figure out how to use the raise hand function, it'll help, just because honestly, there's more people here than there are filling my screen, at least. But otherwise, I've opened up for public comment. Raise hands, do something to let me know you want to speak. Mr. Siebert, it's the first person I see. You're on mute, sir.
Thank you. I'm a little not used to Zoom, so I guess I have to get used to it. I got notification.
So, Mr. Siebert, I'm sorry. Just as we mentioned, you just have to get your name and address, please, for the record.
Thomas Siebert, 52 Grove Street, Concord.
Thank
I'm
you.
a budding neighbor to this property across the street. I did not get notice as an abutter that this was going to happen in the meeting until last Wednesday. I know it was mailed on March 31st postmarked, but it took a number of days to get to me. So I'm not exactly sure what that means, but we did scramble in this neighborhood because we're dead set against this project, okay? And it violates a number of zoning issues that I know of that you people have to make a decision about. It is completely too big, too high, too close to the road, and out of character with this very beautiful historic neighborhood. All right. So we made a big case about this in a letter that I wrote that was signed by basically 40 different people that represented almost every house on Grove Street, some houses on Assabet, some houses on Barrett's Mill Road, and every single abutting neighbor to this property, except for one, weighed in as opposing it. And why is that? Because it is totally out of character. And what they have described so far, Mr. Ringwald, is very inaccurate. So I want we should be very careful about looking at these numbers, okay? The house across the street, which is number 68, which they use as an example of the coverage and the size and everything being so similar. It is on twice as big a lot. The frontage is twice as much. It sits back twice as far from the road, or actually it's 3 times as far from the road. So it's a completely different feel. It's an open feel. This house, the way it will be sited, is going to cancel out any open feeling in that whole area of Grove Street. All right. The house is 36 feet high, basically. It will be by the time it's done, right to the, or 35, right to the limit of the height limit, okay? The zoning will allow. That will cast a shadow on my house on December 30 or 21st, it's winter solstice. It will go 4 feet up the wall of my house. I think that's completely unacceptable. You know, something has to be done about this. Now, either they shorten the house down, which will gain a lot of shadow backing up, or, you know, they have to back the house way back further because they only gain 1 foot in shadow reduction for every foot that they back up. Anyway, this is my concern, but everybody in the neighborhood is up in arms because this house does not stylistically match anything in the neighborhood. You know, it's way, way bigger. There's no house in the neighborhood that's anywhere near as high. My house is 22 feet to the ridge. This house is 35 feet to the ridge. It will make my house, it will dwarf it, and it will dwarf just about every house. Mr. Ringwald talked about one of the houses as being the same height. It is not. It is 10 feet lower to the ridge. So be careful about how you look at these numbers. We just got today, okay, a change in their plans. The plot plan changed, or the site plan changed. They backed it up to accommodate us. It is not enough. It is not what we want, okay? They have to like reduce the size of the house so it will fit on this lot. This house was not designed for this lot. This house was designed to go in Lexington or some other place. He has another project going in Lexington, and he's using the same exact plan. So how is that tailored to the neighborhood? We need that. We need that. We've looked at this mess here for 40 years, and it's time that we get something here that we can feel good about, okay? And what we need is a smaller house, a nicer designed house, more tailored to the neighborhood. I think all the, a lot of the houses have the characteristic of built under the eaves, a story and a half or a story and 3/4 on the second floor level. This keeps the ridges and keeps the eaves lower. This is a very important design feature of Grove Street. And you go away from this, it just sticks out like a sore thumb. So I could talk a lot about historical values here. This neighborhood is almost on a list to be designated a historical National Register neighborhood. Do you know that the Concord commissioned a study of this in 2012, and this is what was recommended then. So to do something that detracts from it, I think is really upsetting. So, we do not, deny development. We've done development in this neighborhood. We put in a affordable housing unit here. We squabbled about that. We came to a consensus. We allowed it to happen. It was a fine thing. It's been here for 20 years. It's been an asset to the neighborhood. We had issues between Assabet and us over the change in location of Assabet Ave that changed the character of the neighborhood, but we agreed to it and it got done. So we're not against change. We just need change that fits. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Siebert. I'm not gonna, Mr. Ringwall, I'm sure you want to respond, but I'm gonna take some more comments first. So the first person I had was Mr. Higgins. There we go.
Okay, hi, I'm Richard Higgins. I live at 15 Grove Street and have for 25 years. And I think that this house would categorically destroy the character of this neighborhood. A 4,400 square foot house, and that's what it is. Let's remember, that's the external structure. I'm sorry, but we don't care if it has 4 or 5 bedrooms or if people can stand up in the attic. That isn't the point. The external structure of the house would dwarf anything in the neighborhood, contrary to what Mr. Ringwall has represented. The existing house is 1,035 square feet. Okay, a tiny ranch house. You would never propose to build a house 4 times that size on the same lot, and yet this house is even bigger than that at 4,406 square feet. And the nearest house that I know of is at 68 Grove, essentially across the street at 3,800 square feet. That's the biggest on Grove Street. And that's on twice the amount of land. There are 18 houses that front Grove Street, mine and Tom's involved. And the average square footage is around 2,300 square feet. Again, about half of the size of this house. We just don't want it to look like Conant Street, which is just a horrible example of what happens when houses just get totally out of control to the neighborhood. I think this would really be very, very harmful to the character of this neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. I should have noted before to Mr. Siebert that we certainly did receive his letter and signed by many people, all of whom seem to also admit that something besides what is there now will also be a good thing, whatever that turns out to be. Ms. Jasinski?
Jasinski. Hi. That's okay.
Sorry about that.
Mary Ann Jasinski. I live at 22 Grove Street. And I just wanted to add my comments about, I also am in agreement with my neighbors about, and I did sign the letter that Tom had submitted about, whether or not this house will fit into the character of the neighborhood. I am very concerned about the size and scope of what the plans are. I did go online and look at the new plans that were submitted, and what I would ask the committee to do is require that we get to see new plans as well as a good depiction of what the home would look like. And I would also ask that you maybe come to this neighborhood so you can picture it better. From what I look at when I look at the plans, and I look at the renderings, it is not a house that would fit within this neighborhood. I think that there was a slight argument that there are other homes that are similar. I disagree. I can think of one home that maybe does not fit within the neighborhood. And had I known that it was going up, I would have had the same argument against it going up. So now I do feel like I do have the chance now to voice my objections to this home. I would ask the committee to get a new submission of plans that we're able to see a better rendering of the house and the size. But again, I worry that it's still going to be too big and not appropriate for the lot size.
Thank you, Mr. Jasinski. I can pretty much assure the people on this that we're going to end up looking at this. We're going to end up with a site visit here. It's just, that is certainly our tradition when we have situations like this where there's some controversy. I think I have Ms. Warren next, Cindy Warren.
Hi, Cindy Warren, 821 Barrett's Mill Road. First of all, I like Tom would like to say that I worked for Home Depot for 10 years. I do real estate development. I have my entire career. So I'm not an anti-development person. I understand the realities of working with the community and trying to develop in an appropriate manner. Having said that, I don't think that the presentation that I've heard tonight or any of the information that's been submitted in any way supports the granting of special permit. Financial hardship, as we all know, may be a severe situation for someone who overpaid for a lot, but as a practical matter, that is not a legal standing under which a committee like yours can issue a special permit to build a house. The applicant also mentioned that there were trees in the rear that wouldn't allow the house to be positioned on the lot accordingly, and that to me indicates that perhaps this is not the appropriate lot for the dimensions and the location that is being promoted by this application. Again, I think that you can see that there's some passion in this neighborhood. There are educated people who take serious note of where they live and the kind of community that they want to live with. So I think that this developer has never approached any of us individually, as far as I know. I've never received any kind of information on this property. I've never received any kind of notification from the board. And yet I am one house lot on Barrett's Mill Road beyond the Siebert's house. So I'm two lots away from where this home is being built. I defer to the board and their expertise and their chances to review the information in detail. But I will say that should there be a special permit granted for the plans that have been submitted, I think there will be serious consideration of an appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Warren. Ms. Robinson, I believe, Julia Robinson. Ma'am, I think you may still be on mute, but I'm not hearing you. I'm still not hearing you. No. No, I'm not hearing you, ma'am. Sorry. No. Not yet.
Here we go. Can you hear me now?
Ah, yes,
Hi.
there we go.
Sorry. All right. I just wanted to chime in on.
Sorry, I'm sure you said your name and address
Oh,
when you were off mute, but I've got to
yeah,
get you to do it again.
sorry. It's Julia Robinson, and I'm at 86 Grove Street.
Thanks.
So given that our address, we're basically across the street and one house over from the red house. So we see the red house, or the property, we call it the red house. And I just wanted to reiterate that I think that the style of the build is really important for this neighborhood. Being in Concord, it's one of the things that drew us to the house that we live in, which is an 1890s Victorian farmhouse. There's so sorry, my 4-year-old is yelling at me. There's so much character to these houses. And I think that that's something you don't see in a lot of development that's happening even, throughout other towns. And I think that's what makes Concord so special, and feels so historic. And I think that that's something that's very important, to keep this neighborhood, just true to the way that it was built back in the day. So that's something I just wanted to kind of chime in on. And I agree that it's too big and it's too close to the street as well. But I would just absolutely love to see something that fits the aesthetic of the rest of the majority of the houses in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Thank you to your son or daughter, whoever that. Like to see them chiming in. I should have asked them for their name and address. The next
You don't want
person
to
I
hear from
have,
him, he'll talk all night.
the next person I have is Mr. Lanieri, I think, if I have it right.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Mike Lanieri, owner of 37 Grove Street, one of the abutting properties to the lot in question. I wanted to speak tonight because I had submitted a letter to the board. I wanted to clarify the intent of that letter. The letter that was sent was in full support of demolishing the property that exists and putting a new property in place. As many of the residents of our street have mentioned, we're not talking about or talking about preserving the property that's there right now. We all would like to see something nice and new. But the letter I had sent was not in support of a specific proposal. I understand that proposal was granted. There was another proposal that was put in today, which I haven't had a chance to review. But I wanted to be clear that I'm not supportive of a specific proposal. And I also appreciate the concerns that the residents of our street have shared. I share those concerns, especially as an abutting property owner, and also felt the need that as my property was brought up on this call from Mr. Ringwald as an example of one of the reasons to support the new property, I'd like to clarify that as Mr. Ringwald described, our property is 2,300 square feet on a 0.33 acre lot. The proposed property is almost double in size in a 3,800 square feet, but the lot size is only 25% bigger at 0.44 acres. So it's almost double the size of a house on a lot that's not nearly double the size. And I felt that is important because I don't think my property is a good example of, or should be used to support the proposed property on the lot in question. Ultimately, I defer to the board. I have not signed the petition myself, but defer to the board and their expertise in these matters to help us determine and come to the conclusion that's most appropriate to preserve our community.
Thank you, Mr. Lanieri. So let me just pause here. I mean, happy to have other comment, but I don't see any hands raised at the moment. So I would say that just to preface other comments, first, as I mentioned, we've seen the letters. We've certainly heard the comments tonight. We are assuredly not going to grant this without looking at this property. So there will be a site visit, and we're going to be continuing this meeting to a different time. But basically, what I'm hearing from all of the neighbors is pretty consistent, which is that as much as they want to see the red house go, the neighbors are contending that in this area of lot of non-conforming lots, which is important, and we'll have that discussion later. But that they would like to see something that is smaller and more in keeping with the general architectural area. So I just want to make sure that that's what we're hearing. If you think we are not hearing that, we certainly are. So happy to have more comments, of course, as we go. The next person I have is Mr. Bain, Ted Bain, is that correct? Or Ms., I guess.
And my wife is here also. We're at 71 Assabet, and basically.
So I have to get you to just do the whole rigmarole.
Okay,
Your
Ted
name.
Bain, Ted Bain, 71 Assabet.
Great, thank you, Mr. Bain.
And if I look out the windows in the back of my house, all I will be able to see is this new McMansion. We look right across the old B&M railway line, which runs down behind us, is mostly grass. It doesn't belong to me, but it's in terms of viewing, I view straight at the Red House, and I know a little bit about its history. The important thing about this area, and Tom alluded to this, is that it's under historic restrictions. There was a park built in the 1900, 1910 area, and many of the houses on Assabet and some of the houses on Barrett's Mill and some of them on Grove basically are listed in that what was built in that park at that time. And those houses are restricted by the town to stay in some sense the same size, roughly the same size. So the house next to me, which burned to the ground, could only be rebuilt according to the same rough footprint. I agree with Tom about much of what he said about the character of this. I'm going to be looking at the backside of this house. I'm not happy about the mansion aspect of it. I live in an old house. It was built for the clerk of the prison who lived here in the 1900 to 1910 area. And I've read his history and his story, and the house doesn't look like it did in 1900 and 1910, but I know the foundation. I can tell from the foundation that that was the era. So there's that sense about it, that there is history here. And to build a house like that is being proposed just flies in the face of that history and the variety, the diversity that's here. Both history and newness are cohabitating.
How much people?
Great, thank you, Mr. Bain. Oops, are you finished?
Do you want to say something? All right, I think I'm done. Thank you very much for a chance.
Thank you, Mr. Bain. Mr. Hollywood, if you're not speaking, if you could go on mute, but Mr. Hollywood? Somewhere. Did I lose Mr. Hollywood? I had a hand raised for John Hollywood, and now I'm not.
He's still here, and he's on mute at the moment, trying to unmute.
Okay, maybe he's having the same problem that Ms. Robinson had. Mr. Hollywood, we're not hearing you if you think you're off of mute. Still not hearing you, sir. I think I served with Mr. Hollywood on the planning board about 3 million years ago. All right. You want to try it one more time, Mr. Hollywood, or I think, hello? All right, well, Mr. Ringwall, I don't see anybody else up, and while Mr. Hollywood's trying to get in, perhaps if you had any comments, that would be great. As I mentioned, I think that I suggested that we were going to have a site visit. I saw at least one other board member nodding her head in approval. So at a minimum, 2, 3. So at a minimum, just so that you know that this is not going to be a situation we're going to resolve tonight, but we probably will as a board provide some direction, but I just want to make sure we have all of public first. So Mr. Ringwald, would you like to speak? Otherwise, we can go to our board discussion.
Certainly. The applicant unfortunately had family issues and is flying to England to help his father. I've heard on his behalf these comments. I will speak with him and we'll look to see what we can do to adjust architecture and possibly relocate, but that will take some doing on the site, but maybe with some alternative architecture. We have heard the comments to say that the house is completely too big, too close, too high. It meets all of the zoning requirements. I understand from their standpoint of the neighborhood, and I will talk to the applicant and see if we can't make some adjustments relative to those points. But we do meet the zoning. We are well under the allowed FAR. We meet all the setbacks, and we look forward to attending the site walk with the board and a continued hearing at your designated time.
So let me make a couple of comments, Mr. Ringwald. First, I'm going to ask Mr. Hollywood if he's in or not. No. Let me just make a couple of comments. So it is, I think it's important to understand that the reason that the applicant is here before us is because they're trying to expand the size of a house on a non-conforming lot beyond 50% of its current size. And that does require a special permit. And one of the characters of this particular neighborhood, which we have run into in other situations as well, is that this is a neighborhood that is primarily consists of non-conforming lots, which means that from the the Zoning Board of Appeals point of view, it is a neighborhood that we have the judicial power to sort of affect. If this was one non-conforming lot and a whole sea of conforming lots, one of the things that we would be ultimately saying to the neighborhood is that any one of the conforming lots could be, the house could be taken down and a new house could be put in its place. And as long as it met the setbacks and the height requirements and all that sort of stuff, that there isn't much anybody could do about it. But this is a situation where it is a lot of non-conforming lots, and our special permit regulations talk about the extent to which the house that is the special permit that's being sought has an impact on the rest of the neighborhood. So I just think it would be important for you to convey to to the applicant that that's the key issue that I think that the board is going to be looking for. The second thing I would say is that if you think you're going to make some substantial changes, and certainly you got to talk to your client, but if you think you're going to be making some substantial changes, it may well be that it would be a good idea to push this off to a later time, and maybe push our site visit off to a time that we would have that information at that time. But I'll just make those comments. And Ms. Hughes, sorry.
Oh, no worries. So typically the board has also asked applicants, before you go out and do a site visit, to at least stake the four corners of the dwelling and possibly do a story poll for the highest point of the structure. So to your point, Mr. Chairman, that would be great if the proposed architecture and the dwelling is going to stay the same, but if they are going to amend the architecture and the structure, then that would be somewhat of a waste of time. So I think the options for the board are to continue this out to next month, and then Mr. Ringwald can inform us whether they're going to make substantial changes or not, and the board can find time to do a site visit before next month or continue this out for 2 months, allow that conversation with his client and to make changes in the plans, and then schedule a site visit once they know what direction they're going to go with the proposed project. So those are the board's options.
Okay, Mr. Ringwald, I see some other hands up, but Mr. Ringwald, do you have a sense of this? I mean, would it be helpful to push us out 2 months so you have a chance to connect with your client? You said he had some other issue, or she or he had some other issues that might be more important than this at the moment.
Yeah, he does, but I'm certain that it can be fairly fast acting. We would like to just push it out 1 month, sir.
All right, thank you. Ms. Rankin?
Yeah, hi, Jenny Rankin. I live at 15 Grove Street. Can you just help me understand the process here in terms of the site visit? Is that something that the neighborhood is informed about? I haven't been involved in one of these situations before. If you could just explain to me something about the site and our
Sure, the open meeting laws require that if 2 or more of us are gathered at any time under any place, that we have to post that so that heaven forbid if we talk to each other that everyone will know that it happened. So I don't actually mean to denigrate the process. The process is extraordinarily important. So long as we're in a position where multiple members of the board can attend the site visit at the same time, it is posted. And I don't know, Elizabeth, if we notify the butters or what we do on that. I don't think we do, but we post it.
No, there's no legal requirement to notify abutters. It may take a week or 2 to even figure out if there is a quorum of members that can meet at the same time. If there is not that possibility for a quorum of members to meet at the same time, then each board member would go out individually and have a site visit themselves. The one thing under state law, while it is a site visit, it is not a public meeting. It would be up to the applicant whether they wish to grant the public access to private property. The board has the right to go onto the property because they've filed an application, but that does not give the right of the general public. So that would be a conversation that Mr. Ringwald would have to have with his client on whether he would allow public access onto the property for the site visit. But if there is a quorum of members, it is a posted site visit that does get posted 48 hours prior to the board's conducting the site visit. And that does get posted on the town's webpage along with the other board's agendas.
And we don't have any discuss. I mean, it's not even though 2 or 3 of us may be there, it's not we don't have a discussion. Yeah. Per se, it's about asking questions. It's about viewing. It's exactly what people were talking about here. It's viewing the neighborhood and the character of the neighborhood. It's looking at the thing on the ground so that we're not simply relying on pictures that are hard to see. But this is not a place of discussion, and it is certainly not a place of decision. And so the next thing that would happen after the site visit is we come back to a meeting such as this and begin the process over again, have a presentation from the applicant, hear from the public, have a discussion of the board.
Thank you.
All right, anything else from the board at this stage? I mean, am I reading the board correctly? I think I saw hands up about a site visit. Oh yeah, okay.
Jim, if I may, well, you read me, don't know the rest of the board, but you read me correctly. Was nodding heavily, so I think a site visit would certainly be appropriate. And I think, some of the, given the questions that the other board members asked, I think, we'll we're thinking sort of in the same direction. But, you know, as you start to know me, we've been looking here tonight at at elevations of a building. I always look at the site plan of a site. And what struck me, not just, you know, talking about the square footage of the house, but the increase in impervious area that's being put on the site. And looking at our findings that we will have to make if we were to issue a special permit, there's a couple of line items in there that I think would need to be addressed to in my mind, to pass muster. Given the way the site sits, the way it's graded, it's relatively flat, but it's still sheeting off the site. I think stormwater is something that that I would like to have some more information on how the stormwater is being managed. And you know, I'd be looking at you know, given its proximity to the Assabet River, that there is some infiltration being done on the site to compensate for the additional impervious area.
Great,
That's-
thank you, Theo.
Mhm.
So unless there's any more comments, Mr. Ringwall, I'm just gonna.
Yeah, we definitely have this, your site plan doesn't call for that, but on our plans, we are calling for infiltration of all the roof runoff. So we'll be recharging more water on the site than is under the current standards. That's just standard operating procedure with ourselves and our clients for new development or redevelopment of a property. But as I mentioned, I will speak with my client. We'll work on getting some revised architecture. I'll notify Ms. Hughes and the building department as soon as we can have that, so that once we have that, we can stake out the building for a site visit. And I'm confident that we can get that all done well in advance of your next month's hearing.
Okie dokie. So I think we're at the time of getting a motion to adjourn the public hearing, or to continue the public hearing. Thank you. One of those things. Continue the public hearing to sometime next month, and I'm not even going to try to imagine when that date is. So Elizabeth Hughes is going to tell me.
So next month's meeting is Thursday, May 12th. And if you'd like to continue this to 7 p.m., that would be fine.
Okay, can I get a motion to that effect?
I will make a motion to continue the application from Icon Development for a special permit on the section 713, 715, and 11.6 of the zoning board to demolish the existing 1,035 square foot dwelling and construct a 4,406 square foot dwelling on a non-conforming lot at 57 Grove Street to May 12th at 7 p.m.
Second.
Here's a second. There's a second. Ms. Akers-Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Kindermans,
Aye.
Mr. Smith, aye. Thank you all very much for your thank you all very much for all of the comments. We will see you potentially next month on the 12th, and if this gets delayed, that sometimes happens too. So, all right.
Thank you for your time.
Pushing on to the 7:05 hearing. Matt, let's see, Seppi, for a special permit
correct.
under sections 712 and 11.6 of the zoning bylaw for a change of use to a two-family dwelling at 1264, 1266 Main Street. Hello, do I have somebody here?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you are.
My name is Matt Seppi and 4 Fletcher Road in Westford, Mass.
Thank you,
And
Mr. Seppi.
I
Go ahead.
am the applicant here tonight, and the owner of the building, Bob Hilsinger, he's also on, but I'll be doing the presentation and handle any questions. And if Bob needs to jump in, I will ask him to do that.
Great.
I am here tonight requesting a special permit for 1264, 1266 Main Street under sections 7.1.2 and 11.6 to change the use of the current mixed-use building that's being used for offices and residential back to its original 2-family dwelling status. I thought I'd just give a quick history of the property and what my proposed plan would be to the board, and then I open it up to questions from there. The property is located in the West Concord Business District, and it currently sits on a parcel that's 3,750 square feet. The dwelling's about 2,861 square feet. It was built in 1916, and per the Backrus and assessing data information, it was built as a 2-family in 1916 and utilized as a 2-family home until 1971, in about 1970. In 1970, a building permit was submitted and approved, allowing for 4 residential units. And in 1971, a building permit was submitted and approved that changed it to offices and residential. So it's been used in that fashion since 1970. Currently, the first 2 floors are offices, and the top floor is 1 residential unit. Of the offices, there are 2 that are currently occupied, and the rest are vacant, and the 1 residential unit is currently occupied. The building in its use right now is currently non-conforming. Per the zoning bylaw, it's 7.7.2.1. Table 4, we would technically need 10 parking spots for the building to be conforming, and the site only has 5 spots right now. Additionally, it's non-conforming under 4.2.3.3, which would require open space that would equal twice the gross square footage of the residential area, which the site currently does not have either. So the limited parking spots has really been what's a challenge for Bob as an owner in the past, because there's not even enough parking spots to support the offices and the residential tenants that are there. Never mind folks that need to come visit those offices as clients or other visitors. So the building's been underutilized over the past, decades, because it's been challenging to keep tenants in there due to the limited parking that exists. So in speaking with Bob, thought it might be a better option to request a special permit to convert the house back to its original use, which was a 2-family dwelling. In the West Concord Business District, that does require a special permit, so that's why we're here tonight. Our plans for the building would be to basically give it a complete interior and exterior renovation. It definitely could use some new life, the building the way it is right now today. We wouldn't be adding any square footage or changing any elevations of the building, but we would be doing a complete renovation of it. It's currently made of it has stucco exterior, so we'd be removing all the stucco and the trim. We'd be putting on hardy plank siding. We'd be putting on all new trim, all new windows, new roof. We have to rebuild the front porch. The interior has some challenges as well, so we'll be doing significant renovation in the interior as part of the proposed project. Also, if the proposed units were approved, the 2 residential units would require 2 parking spots each. So that would be a total of 4 units, and the site has 5. So it would help eliminate the non-conforming situation that currently exists with the parking under today's use. I think overall, it would provide a good option for some in-town housing that would better utilize the building than what it's currently being used for with offices, and get some folks that would be able to walk to the amenities of the village center. And I think by not adding any square footage to it, it also does keep the units fairly modest in size in comparison to some of the other Wachter Center dwellings that are currently being constructed. So we thought it would be a good use to request a special permit to bring it back to its original state of a two-family dwelling. And I think at that, I'll open it up to the board for questions, please.
Correct. We'll start with questions from the board.
Are the 5 spaces at the rear of the building?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I have no questions.
I just had a question. I guess I have one quick one, which is that I think it's like 2,861 square feet. And I think if I read these plans correctly, the 2 units would be sort of mirror images of each other. So they'd be roughly 1,400 square feet. Is that each? Is that a fair
Approximately
statement?
1,430 each. Yes.
And Elizabeth, if you're still on. Oh, she is. Ah, there you are.
Of course, I'm still on.
I just couldn't see your smiling face or your name. So this is this currently is greater than the maximum floor area, but I gather that given the fact that they're not changing the size at all, that those rules don't come into effect. Am I correct with that, or am I?
Correct. It is a legally non-conforming structure.
Okay. And is there anything else we should be looking at here, Elizabeth, in terms of the permit sections to just focus on, or I think, or
No,
you?
I mean, it's a legally non-conforming structure as far as the square footage of the structure on the site. It's currently legally non-conforming as far as the parking. The proposed plan will bring it into conformance with the required parking with the 5 spaces and 2 residential units. Basically a 2-family would only require 4 parking spaces. They're not changing any of the exterior, the footprint of the building. It's pretty straightforward.
Thank you. All right. Other questions from the board? All right. Hearing none for the moment, we're going to open this up to the public. Is there anybody who would like to speak? Raise hand function if you can. We're looking around here. Anybody seen anything?
Matthew.
Mr. Blackman. Mr. Blackham, excuse me, Mr. Blackham. Yes, no?
Hi, sorry
there you
about
are. No problem.
that. Matthew Blackham, 10 Wright Farm in Concord. I'm also the owner of the property next door at 1260 Main Street, and just wanted to speak in support of what our neighbor's proposing.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anything else? All right, hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Yeah, I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, comments, questions, thoughts from the board? Discussion.
Proposal makes a lot of sense to me. Gets a good use of the building and no changes to the exterior, or I mean, it seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, and brings it in better in conformance than the current situation. So,
And I know this site pretty well, and it will be a significant improvement if they make the changes he's mentioned on the outside.
Okay, we seem to be in rampant agreement. Can we get a motion?
Sure. All right, I move that we approve the application by Matt. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say your last name.
Seppi.
It's Seppi, yes.
For a special permit under section 712 and 11.6 of the zoning bylaw for a change of use to a 2-family dwelling at 1264, 1266 Main Street, parcel number 2448.
Second.
For the discussion, we'll note in the decision that there's no change to the area or to the basic external structure of the building. All right, Ms.
Thank you to the board for your time
Aye.
tonight. Thank you.
Oh, yep, we haven't done
Oh,
it
we
yet.
still have
Mr.
to vote.
Smith. Give us a shot.
Okay.
Ms. Akers-Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Kindermans,
Aye.
Mr. Smith, aye. Now you can thank us. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all for hanging in there for your 7:05 public hearing that started promptly at 8:05. So we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Okay, next here is Zur Adius for a special permit under sections 4.2.2.2. Adius? I think I might remember. 11.6 of the zoning bylaw for a 999 square foot additional dwelling unit at 39 Assabet Avenue. And did I say your name correctly or not, sir?
Last name's Atias. So almost.
Atias, sorry about that.
Which is
I
no
see your
worries.
signs, but
Yes.
okay, go for it.
Well, thank you, everybody. I'm a local real estate broker, as everybody knows.
Yeah, we just, sorry, need you to identify.
48 Thoreau Street, Concord, Mass.
Thank you.
Just a real estate broker here and just in front of the board at the moment on behalf of Cindy Houlihan, who's the owner of the property. The first thing that I'd like to mention is that the proposal would not change the existing structure on the exterior in any way, shape, or form. Actually, there would be absolutely no changes to the exterior of the current structure. The other piece that I think is important to note is that the septic system for the property is actually is a 5-bedroom septic system, and this would be the 5th bedroom for that property. The main house is fundamentally a 4-bedroom home. Not much to say about it. The space that was originally added onto the original structure was added on for some ailing parents at the time, and now they just want to formally make it a proposed additional dwelling.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to jump in with a real quick question on the follow-up there. So it already had all of the facilities, et cetera?
What would happen here is that there would be, there's a family room that is attached to the main house. There would be a separating firewall that would be built between that family room space and the proposed area. So it'd be a complete separation between the two areas, the main house and then obviously the proposed additional dwelling unit. Other than that, it really wouldn't require much change to the structure. The basement of the additional dwelling unit would be able to be accessed through a bulkhead, which would have a dismantled interior lock, and an exterior lock would be put onto that. So the additional dwelling unit, should in any emergency situation need to get into the basement space that's below it, would have access to do that through the bulkhead of the property. It would be a bathroom, kitchen, sort of dining area, and a 1-bedroom. And of course, it would be below the 1,000 square foot guideline.
Okay, thank you, sir. Other questions from the board?
Where will the parking be for this additional unit?
Yeah, so the parking is already exists. It is on the left side of the additional unit. There's plenty of parking there in the driveway for both the current homeowner and 2 additional spots for the proposed space. The parking is already paved and already exists as that area. The area that we're proposing was already used by some aging parents in the past when it was originally built and created.
Other questions?
Jim, kind of going off of what I think you were asking, I kind of read that this was already in existence. So is the kitchen, bathroom, all that already basically there? And this is just.
Everything is there. Everything
Yeah,
is there.
okay. So it's all right. So it's already built out and this is just asking for formal recognition.
Yeah, the only thing that would need to be added to this space as you currently see it from a diagram perspective would be a firewall separating this space from the main house that currently exists. There literally would be no changes other than that firewall separation between the two to create the proposed additional dwelling.
And Elizabeth, or I assume Elizabeth, you would know, when it was built, it was permitted correctly and
So when it was built as an addition, and it was going to be part of the main house, and the kitchen was going to be taken out of the main house and put into this addition. And then not quite sure what historically happened during that building permit phase. So ultimately, currently the structure does have 2 kitchens. And so the reason that in conversations that Mr. Atias and I had with the building commissioner, looking at ways to actually legally be able to separate off this as an additional dwelling unit under the new provisions, and having it meet the less than 1,000 square feet or less. And that is the reason for the requirement for the construction of that fire separation wall, and that they're to create that 1,000 square foot ADU.
right. Okay, so that's how I was reading the application, basically just to bring it into conformity with
Correct.
the current regulations. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? I can open it up to the public comment. So far, I'm not seeing anybody. Give it a couple more minutes. Okay. All right. I'm going to close the public hearing. Further questions, comments, discussion by the board?
Oh, I was just gonna say, again, it seems like a kind of a no-brainer to me to make this be legally correct. So makes sense to me, and there's been no comments from the neighbors or opposing it, so.
I totally agree with that. It seems neat, straightforward, and bring it into compliance. It's a good thing.
So I see that Ms. Warren has raised a hand. We've closed the hearing, but I'm going to just allow the comment just because I think this Zoom and sometimes takes a while to get your hand up. So Ms. Warren, do you have a comment?
Yes, Cindy Warren, 821 Barretts Mill Road. I just had a question. Is the intent here to allow this individual dwelling unit to be sold off as turned into a condominium and sold off as an individual unit, or will it continue to be an accessory use?
So under the zoning bylaw provisions, this cannot be sold off from the main dwelling. It's being approved as an additional dwelling unit, not a 2-family dwelling. So it cannot be condominiumized and sold off.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe, Elizabeth, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the owner of the property needs to be living in one of the 2 units, right?
Correct.
So it shouldn't be rented out to 2
Correct.
different people.
Right. Okay, thank you, Ms. Warren. So should we proceed to a vote here?
I will make a motion to approve the application for special permit under sections 4222 and 11.6 of the zoning bylaw for a 999 square foot additional dwelling unit at 39 Assabet Avenue, parcel 1909.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Mr. Kindermans,
Aye.
Ms. Akers-Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Smith, aye. Thank you very much. You are on your way.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. The next matter before us is Britt Amberson for a special permit under section 6.2.13, 7.1.5, 11.6 of the zoning bylaw to construct a 166 square foot addition on a legally non-conforming lot that exceeds the floor area ratio. The addition will increase the nonconformity so that the lot exceeds the maximum FAR by 222 square feet. It's at 44 Central Street. And I think before we start, that Mr. Swaim indicated that he was going to be recusing himself from this item. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, just so we'll have that information. So, Mr. Amberson, perhaps, or whoever is going to be speaking for this.
Hi. Yes, Ms. Amberson.
Ms. Amberson, okay.
No worries. Hi, my name is Britt Amberson. I'm here from DSK, doing Schmidt Kearns Architects and Planners, on behalf of James and Ashley Cohane of 44 Central Street, and I believe they are also here on the call. So before I invite them to speak, may I have screen sharing capabilities? And I have an additional computer called Britt Amberson Computer. If that could have the capabilities, that would be wonderful.
You're all set, Britt.
Thank you. So James and Ashley?
Hi, we're Ashley and James Cohane. We've been living at 44 Central for the last 5 years. Both of us grew up in Concord, and both of our entire families are here in Concord. So we, are very committed and connected to this community. I'm a teacher at the high school here in Concord, and we have 2 small kids, Lila, who's 4.5, and Xander, who's 2.5. We love our house, we love our community, we love our neighborhood and our neighbors, and we'd love to be able to stay in this house for a long time. One of our sort of initial concerns when we moved into the house is that there's no bathroom on the first floor, which has proved to be challenging, mainly because both of our parents, we love being able to have them over here. In advance of coming, they make sure they go to the bathroom so they don't have to go up and down the stairs. James's father has been known to use the backyard.
Hello.
Oh
no.
We're losing you.
You still have us. Go.
We still have you. You broke up. I don't know if you'll need to. You may have to cut down the video or something.
Moving to another spot.
That's better.
We love our home, but the not having a bathroom on the first floor has been a challenge in being able to have our parents over. We don't have my grandmother over to the house because we can't ask her to go up and down the stairs. And we'd also love to be able to move laundry to a space so that it's more accessible in our house.
Yeah, right now it's in the basement and it's fine. I'm 48 and lugging the laundry down into our basement is fine now, but in 15 years, I don't know. It's kind of, the stairs are steep and narrow and it's not going to be fun eventually for me to do that. So this renovation contemplates getting laundry on the second floor, which would be huge. We have 2 young kids. And so anyway, Britt, I don't know if you want us to say anything else.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'll touch upon the mudroom as well when I go with the floor plans. All right, let me share my screen. Everybody see this okay? I wanted this one.
Yes.
Awesome.
That one too.
Okay, excellent. So this is the existing site plan that has the house here located. Here's Central Street. Here's the house and here's the garage. The house is existing non-conforming within this side yard setback here. The garage is within this side yard setback, and a large portion of the garage is also in the rear yard setback. Here are some photos just to orient you to the home. So here's approaching on Central Street. This is the south elevation of the house. I'm just going to move quickly here because this isn't where the project is going to be. And this is the rear yard. So this is where we're looking to where James and Ashley are looking to put an addition. So to move on, the vision for this is it's really rooted in utility. They're looking to put a powder room on the first floor, and as the first floor is 951 square feet with a 200 square foot enclosed porch. Space is pretty tight. They utilize each space as it is, and some of these spaces definitely have more than one use to them. So finding the space to put a powder room on this floor has proved to be challenging, as each space is very important to them. Also, they're looking to improve and add a true mudroom. Currently, they have an entry hall that has space for hooks and whatnot, but it's really only space for one person. So to be able to add a mudroom, add a powder room, and then relocate their laundry to the second floor were the real design goals of this project. And another design goal added that would be incorporated is to actually connect their kitchen, which is kind of their main living space, and their living space, and also kind of the living space here to the rear yard. And so they can actually have a nice connection to their backyard and their landscape. So let's see, so the laundry was resolved with an interior renovation, so that by the removal of this chimney. But we really felt that to have a mudroom and to have a powder room, we were going to need to add the smallest amount we could think of to do so. And the house is already it is 100 and it exceeds FAR by 56 square feet. So they would be adding a 166 square foot addition. So it's already over by a little bit, and they're hoping to just bring it a tiny bit over to kind of kick it back into usable space. And the location that we identified as the best location for this mudroom, powder room addition, was right here where the existing bulkhead sits. If you could look at my screen, I'll circle, kind of right here where the existing stairs into the house are in the bulkhead, and they have some hardscape here. This circulation path from the garage door here into the main house is really important for the way they use this house. They're back and forth constantly, multiple times a day here. So we really wanted the mudroom to feel like a natural extension of that circulation. And then also have the added benefit of connecting them to over here to a deck space that they could occupy and actually really enjoy their backyard and be able to move back and forth into the house. So I'm gonna move to the proposed plan right here. So here's the proposed addition, that 166 square foot addition right there. And here's the deck around it. The deck would have a trellis overhead, and it would have stairways out to get them to various points of the backyard. And then especially that entry, they would have some covering here and some cover here, solid here and here, and then open trellis here, just so they can get, from the garage into the mudroom. And at that, I should share some elevations with you, and I'd be happy to open up to comments. So here's the elevation. The elevation also, we were looking to keep it as kind of as simple and compact as we could, but also mirror the design of the front of the house here, with their enclosed porch with that hip roof, and kind of try and kind of do something similar on the back of the house, which is lacking character at the moment. And with that, I will open it up to comments.
All right, so I'll open it up to the board, but Ms. Evans and Ms. Amberson, excuse me. The key issue here, and applicants as well, the key issue here is that this the provision for granting a special permit on a situation where where you're adding to the nonconformity based on the maximum floor area is that we need to make a finding that a literal and I'm reading from the 6.2.13 now, that a literal application of this requirement, that maximum floor area requirement, would be unreasonable because there are no reasonable alternatives available and that the desired relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the neighborhood and without degrading from the intent and purpose of the bylaw. So I think that I'm going to open it up to other questions from the board, but I think that we're going to need the applicant to specifically address this issue of the literal application would be unreasonable and no reasonable alternatives, and probably talk about some of the alternatives that you did consider that would otherwise, keep the space within the current nonconformity. So, but anyway, I'll ask if there are any other questions from other members of the board at this stage before you address that.
I'd like to see the floor plan again if possible.
Sure. Here is first floor plan, second. Here's kind of an overview of the first.
Yep. Thank you.
So I guess I have a question. So the laundry is going to be above this mudroom, or am I missing?
The laundry
No.
will now go actually on the second floor. We are going to be removing a chimney that is not in
I see.
use.
I got it.
Yeah, and so it'll free up some down in that chase. It'll free up some space here on the second floor, so that they can fit the smallest washer dryer possible into that space, and also maintain clearance on either side of the toilet.
Okay. Go ahead, Theo. Any questions?
No, I'm with you. It's that the alternatives I think is important. I mean, looking at the floor plan, it does look like, as Bridget said, that it's the smallest washer dryer that's available, and it's the mudroom and the powder room definitely aren't oversized. So I think I'm with you there, Jim, that the alternatives here is the important one. So what all did you consider for alternatives?
Sure. Okay, I'm gonna pivot to the first floor plan for a moment, just to reference that as we go through it. Let me just get rid of these markups. So the first alternative that we went through was naturally, can we do this without adding? That felt like the most natural way to start. So can we retain, they have specific uses for all of these spaces. Can we retain a dining program, a kitchen, some informal sitting that kind of fluidly exists in these spaces, and the living room? Also, while being able to kind of keep the character of the living room as something closed off. Like, can we actually get a powder room and maybe expand the mudroom in here? And what we found was, if we added this felt like the natural spot to go after, because it was the entry space, and because it was the most important part of this program was that it was on their circulation path. So walking from this door that they use every day into here. And so because they're kind of already using, it's really more of a hallway. We thought, okay, is there a way to maybe expand here? But that started to impede on their dining program, which was pretty far from the kitchen already. They would have preferred that they could have a dining space that was really more connected to the kitchen. And so that was really the only place that we could have put it. We thought about putting it here, and saying, okay, let's connect kitchen and maybe connect dining a little more. You're kind of walking in on the dining table, but maybe that's okay. But the issue with that was actually getting to it, because their driveway, if you look at their existing site plan, it's really tight here. And it kind of, the doors are actually, the door is kind of here, and it kind of bumps out into here so that you can kind of swing into that second space. So we knew that I mean, we're talking in terms of not adding an addition, but anything that would have to be added would have had to, be in this zone here, because you can't actually access the house from this zone. And it also is it's almost more out of the way than the circulation path that they're taking right now. So those were the alternatives that we explored on the front of the house. And then putting it in this corner came up, but it felt like such a deviation from the way that the connection to the backyard, the fact that the bulkhead is now this area, it just felt like this was just kind of the wrong spot to start with. And then of course, the front of the house fell out of the question because they're not using that as they're not using that to walk into the house anyways, as they're pulling their car to the garage, or they pull their car right here. So that didn't feel like a spot where they could actually renovate to put a mudroom. And again, they're using that square footage. So those were the alternatives that led us to placing it quite literally kind of within, what is that plan? Don't mind my hopping around a little bit, to kind of quite literally place it within these setbacks that are here. We wanted to make sure that it was, not affecting the driveway, that it was within the setbacks, that it really kind of was just in the only spot it could go, sort of.
All right, thank you. Other question, thank you. Other questions from the board? Seeing none, I'm going to open it up to public comment. Oh, sorry, Ms. Hughes. You're on mute, but otherwise.
That's quite all right. So as I sit here and think through all of this, and I understand that Mr. Swaim is not participating as a discussion, but from just a zoning perspective. And this may be a conversation that I will have to have with Paul Credence here. He's the local inspector, and maybe he and I can go back and speak with the building inspector before the next meeting. But as I'm sitting here thinking and reading the narrative, the property already exceeds the maximum floor area ratio. It was built before the maximum floor area ratio was adopted. So it is a legally non-conforming structure. So I'm not sure that the board has to make a finding under the maximum floor area ratio, because they are not asking for a special permit to exceed the maximum floor area ratio. It already exceeds it. So, and it is a legally non-conforming structure. So the under section 7.1.3, which would be the extension, alteration, expansion of a non-conforming structure, I think that is the only finding in which the board has to make, along with the special permit findings of 11.6, that what they are proposing is not substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. I think the conversation that the board had regarding the conversation you just had with Britt about the alternative analysis helps to define the board's discussion, but I'm not entirely sure that the board has to make the finding under the maximum floor area ratio section.
Okay, well, that's very muddling.
I apologize.
That's okay. So I see Mr. Johnson's hands up, but I'm just gonna officially state that I'm opening for public comment. So Mr. Johnson. Maybe.
Sorry, my camera's only just now started working. So I was just curious about
Mr.
that.
Johnson, Mr. Johnson, you know the rules. Come on.
All right.
I gotta get your name and
Oh,
address and all.
Matthew Johnson, 21 Winthrop Street, member of the select board, speaking on my own behalf. But, you know, relative to this application, I was just curious about Elizabeth's most recent comment, because I believe across the street from me, there had been an application under the floor area ratio bylaw for a home that was on a non-conforming lot. I believe it's non-conforming, and that was denied. So I've just, you know, and that was a few years back, but it just seems like there already has been an example, you know, where, you know, a house on a non-conforming lot was going to exceed the floor area ratio. I also don't understand this idea that somehow, if you're already over the floor area ratio, that increasing it now at that point no longer matters, because, you know, it always seems like we're always talking about increasing nonconformity. And I would assume that would apply to other elements of the bylaw, with the floor area ratio being an obvious example of, you know, you increase the floor area ratio beyond a threshold, you're increasing nonconformity. So
I definitely need to clarify. It's it has to do with the requirements under the Zoning Act, and when something is a legally non-conforming structure, the provisions under the Zoning Act deals with the allowed expansion, alteration, change, and extension of a legally non-conforming structure. It has nothing to do with the property across the street on Winthrop Street. Yes, it's a legally non-conforming lot, but the structure was not already over the maximum floor area ratio. They were requesting an addition to the house that would then put it over the maximum floor area ratio, among other things. This is not the same situation. This house already is over the maximum floor area ratio. So under the Zoning Act, it has some protections under the law as a legally non-conforming structure.
Yeah, I guess I'm
So-
just thinking if I had a non-conforming structure that's already over the ratio anywhere in town now, I could just, you know, have a much less.
Excuse me,
that's not what I'm.
Johnson,
That's
Mr.
not what I'm
Johnson, no,
saying.
sorry, it's a question of whether we're under. It's a question of whether the special permit standards are found in 7.1.3 and 11.6, or if they also include the statement in 6 point, whatever it is, 2.13. So the question is not, I don't think there's any question or doubt in anyone's mind here that a special permit is required, and that there are standards to be met. It's just a question, and I understand Ms. Hughes's question to be whether it's the 6.2.13 standard, which requires, among other things, an exploration of alternatives, or if it's the other, the non-conforming structure thing, which is a question about whether there is an increase in the non-conformity. And in some respects, there is an increase in the non-conformity, but the standard, there is an increase in non-conformity, but the standard that one would use is just a different standard. I think that's what we're.
Yeah, it's just, I'm surprised that it would be a lower standard for a lot that's non-conforming in a building that's already over the expressed limit. So
it's
that,
the point
and
of
again,
the,
it's nothing about
the
this specific application. It's really more about the precedent and, you know, and the findings, that
I
it would
understand that, but
seem
it's
ironic to me that a lot in a situation like this would have to have a less stringent finding than one that was on a conforming lot, or one that was for a non-conforming lot where the building was below the threshold to start with.
I think
Well,
the
you
building,
can thank the Zoning Act for that.
right, the building, I think it's non-conforming because in my view, it's now also non-conforming because the building itself is non-conforming, right? So, you know, you still have the question about whether or not you're increasing the non-conformity.
Right, but
Anyway,
it's non-conforming because it's in the setback as well, right? So
is it possible that both standards apply? You've got a nonconformity because the existing house goes into the setback. So we want to look at whether you're increasing that nonconformity as well as it being over the FAR and whether you're meeting the FAR standard. It made sense to me that both sections were implicated, but I guess if there's some interplay with the statute that I'm not getting, then that seems to be what Elizabeth is getting at.
Right. And I'm just trying to make the point that 7.1.3 does not go to non-conforming lots, it goes to non-conforming structures. So it's the structures non-conforming for a variety of reasons, including in this case that it's over the FAR, I think is the point. But in any event, so I have officially opened the public hearing. So let me ask if there's anybody else who would like to speak regarding this application. So, excuse me, yes, the applicant or yes. James, I'm sorry, I forgot I've lost your last name.
Last name's Cohane. I mean, sorry.
Cohane, yes.
We didn't have two of our abutters attend the call. We did run this past them and they did not object. It's
I know that both Carrie Flood submitted a letter as well as Kristen Kelty submitted a letter.
Yes.
Yeah, we got those letters. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I should have. Thank you. By the way, I should have mentioned that. I usually try to mention when we have letters.
Just to confirm, you have two letters from two neighbors, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So, thank you. Anybody else? So I'm going to close the public hearing.
So
Yes.
technically you would only, you would close public comment, not the public hearing.
Excuse me, public comment. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's only been 3 years. I've only been the chair two different terms and I still can't get these things right. So keep me in line. All right, I'm closing public comment. And we're still in a public hearing. And I guess that one of the things that I'm looking at this and saying that I'm not sure, I'm not I understand the precedent and I understand getting it right is important. I'm not entirely sure that it matters much to me because I think that they would meet the standard under 6.2.13 as well as the standard under 7.1.3 and the standard under 11.6 in this particular situation. So I'm a little bit mindful of whether or not it's possible to move forward here so that the applicant can go about their business. And if we can resolve this, or Elizabeth, and I'm sorry to the applicant, but I mean, obviously this is, the floor area ratio is a important part of the town. It was recently adopted by town meeting. People care about it greatly, so we need to make sure we get it right. But I'm hoping that we can figure out how to get it right and still let you proceed if I have two other members of the board who agree with my analysis.
I agree in theory. I like the proposal. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think for their living situation in general, I think I'm not 100% there under 6.2.13. They applied under 6.2.13, and if we're reading it says that we may grant relief, right? If there are no reasonable alternatives. So are we being asked to grant relief? Technically, we are, right?
Yes.
So I don't see our way out of 6.2.13 as easily without that finding that there are no reasonable alternatives. Now you're saying it meets reasonable alternatives depending on how you define reasonable alternatives. I know we've been through this intellectual argument with variances and things before. What is a reasonable alternative? Well, they set up a pretty narrow way that they're desires can be met in these alternatives, right? Of course, there are reasonable alternatives. You could take the porch over, you could do all this other things. I don't want to have to ask them to do that, but I am not there yet legally on how, and I think we have in the past, and it's the one on the Cross Academy, is that where it was? Where someone wanted to put a playroom over a garage and we said no, I think for this exact reason, that this is the FAR and there's a reasonable alternative. You don't do it. You don't have enough room on the lot based on the FAR. So I hope I can be proved wrong on that, because I would like to approve it, but I'm not there yet.
Okay, thank you. This is I'm sorry, but I'm trying to look on my iPad here and I'm not getting there very fast. What's the square footage of this house?
It was like 27 or something like that. 27.
It's 17, it's about 1750.
Oh,
Yeah,
I've
but
got, so on our application, we have total existing gross square footage as 2,971 square feet. That includes the garage. And then, or that's total existing, total proposed would be 2,957 square feet, and happy to break it down to by floor if needed.
I mean, the one difference between the house that you're referring to is I believe that was like 4,800 square feet to begin with, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it's being in powder room limits where you're gonna put it, right? Like you can't take the entry out and put the powder room in between the dining room and the kitchen. You know, there are limits on. I think the alternatives are limited as a result, and it's not, you know, it's not a playroom that you could potentially need. You can playroom stick in the front porch and do somewhere.
I 100%, yeah, I agree with you, but then again, that's the philosophical, is it reason?
Right.
So don't have a powder room, you know, I mean, I'm not saying that I like that alternative, but I'd like to legally get there. And I think that under 6.2.13, we're not there yet.
What would you need? What would you need?
Well, I think
A strong legal argument from one of my board members here. Ravi, Jim, go on. No offense, Theo. I'm looking at the lawyer.
No, hey, no offense taken.
Well, or a ruling that says that you don't have to go to section 2.6 whatever it is, 2.13.
Yeah.
All
I would say is the house is tiny, right? And there's steep stairs to go upstairs to use the bathroom, and I mean, we'd have to move when we get old. I mean,
I'm on your side with that. I'm trying to get there under this provision, which has given us a lot of grief and is in this bylaw, not necessarily because we wanted it there. I'm just speaking for myself, but so we need to, I don't know. I'm curious, Robbie, you were the only probably other person that kind of questioned that, whether you can move out of this 6.2.13. Are you?
Yeah, and you know, I think the last two we approved, the footprint of the house was not increasing, whereas here the footprint is increasing. So that kind of gave me pause. You know, I'm persuaded that if you want to have a mudroom for a family of 4, it's really not reasonable to try and put it up anywhere else. That argument doesn't really work for the powder room. The powder room doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, near where you come in from the garage. But I think the two elements are kind of tied together in that, you know, designing them both into the same space and addition seems to make sense. You know, I guess, did we think about splitting them out so the powder room, you know, goes somewhere else, like on a corner of the porch, and you just have the mud room, so the addition isn't as big?
We did consider that. Part of that, they were looking to kind of preserve that front of the house and not touch it. So we were trying to kind of keep the impact on the house just in one zone and not have to kind of take over the entire home. That was really the thinking. And to also kind of scale the addition that just wasn't, yeah, it felt like the right spot.
And Ravi, I also, again, what I just said, it sort of reiterated again. I think, you know, it's powder room. It's you want to put it at a logic place. You know, you can't put it next to the front door. You know,
Yeah.
so you are limited on your options.
I guess I would just caution, I mean, again, it's an application I would like to approve. I just would caution again that when we're saying what's reasonable, then we are putting ourselves in the position now of every time anyone comes before us and they want X room or whatever, whether we think it's reasonable. Right now, we all think it's reasonable that you need a mudroom and a powder room. So, I mean, maybe we can get ourselves out of 6-2-13, but just, or if that's the precedent we set, then that's the precedent we set. But that's up to us to determine what modern living, you know, what's reasonable for modern living.
And I think a powder room on the first floor is that, you know, and playroom above.
I agree, but is that for us to say, you know?
Right, but Theo,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, it's having a powder room on the first floor, but you know, there's now, you know, a big great room with this living kind of sitting area, but there's also a separate living room next to it. Do you need 2 living rooms? Like, you can kind of go, you know, you can take this in a different direction, and the way you present it can make it sound more or less reasonable. That's where I think
It's a
you
foregone
are
conclusion that you need a powder room on the first floor, for example, which again, I would like to approve, but then someone comes before us with a pool room or whatever that, you know, and then we say it's not reasonable to add more square footage because of this. And I say, who are you to tell us, you know, how we're using our house? Just something to think about if we're going to be putting, you know, we're going to be ruling on other things in the future that are similar.
And, you know, I think some of the elements that are in line with past precedent here are that this isn't a mansion. It's not becoming a mansion. It's a very small house. There's real tight space constraints about what can be done for, you know, the use that's desired here. And I think that use is, we've heard, is a benefit to, you know, keeping people in town. And, you know, I'm not sure there would be that many houses that fall in that pattern, where all of a sudden we'd have a problem with, you know, we're getting away from the intent of what the max FAR is supposed to do. So, you know, I think it's easy to satisfy. There's not a detriment to the neighborhood. You know, this is in keeping with the spirit of the bylaw. We do have to make that finding about the reasonable alternatives, and I think that's why we tried to flesh out, here are all the other things we thought about and why they didn't work. And that gets us to kind of like, here's the, you know, it's not a huge powder room, it's not a huge mud room, it's kind of the minimum addition to get what you're looking for without having to sacrifice another piece of what's already a small living area here. So that's kind of how I get there. But again, you know, I hear where you're coming from, that we want to be pretty circumspect and specific in how we make that finding.
Right. And I'll buy what you said, that it's a very specific situation and that this is a carve out for a very specific situation. So I do buy that, Robbie. Sorry.
And I think one of the parts of the specific situation, I mean, none of us have to make our homes ADA compliant, but you know, the idea of not being able to have guests in your home because it's inaccessible for them to use a bathroom facility any place in the home, I think is something that we can really clearly distinguish from a lot of places, and probably starting with the notion that there's no first floor powder room is may well, like Ravi says, it may actually cut out a lot of the possibilities here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Elizabeth, I did see you. I just was using the chair's prerogative to say
No.
whatever I want to say.
That's perfectly fine. The question I have is, so I live in a house, I have, it's a ranch and I have no mudroom. If the mudroom were removed and it was just the powder room addition, would the house is currently legally non-conforming to the floor area ratio. So if you can make this addition smaller. You can just make the addition a powder room, and it would be significantly smaller. So to Elizabeth's point and Robbie's point, that alternative analysis, and it's a family room, a living room, mud room. It's so I can see the conversation about as far as precedent, but again, it's from the zoning act perspective, and that was just my initial question was, if something is a legally non-conforming structure, whether 6-2-13, those findings have to apply, and that's just not a question I can answer.
I think a lot of this is just having this discussion. I wanted to have it out there and and flesh it out with everyone. And I would be happy to approve this, knowing that we have thought through all of this and it's on the record that we really thought about it. So just, I had no desire not to approve it. I just want us to have it on the record that we thoroughly discussed this. And
maybe small addition to the conversation it would be that the additional FAR is in the back of the house, won't be seen from the street, won't be seen by anybody. So it's not, I think, I wasn't really here when that whole FAR discussion was at town meeting, but I think it wasn't the intent, I think, of that discussion to not allow something like we're discussing now.
Thank you. I will say that just to the applicant and others that this language has, there's other places that this is, and I think variance is another place that this language takes place, where we have this literal application. The requirement would be unreasonable because there's no reasonable alternatives, and et cetera, et cetera. I think it is tough language. Unfortunately, it's also language that has a history of suggesting that it is a tough standard. But I think I'm supportive of this in part because I think that I think the argument can be made that a first floor powder room and associated closet and mud room are really probably not the word essential, but certainly are highly desirable to allow any home to have function for having guests, and particularly guests who are either by age or other reason have mobility issues. And so I think that I'm certainly persuaded by that, and I think that when we write this up, we ought to be looking at it and thinking about that as what's going on here. The other piece of this is that we're adding whatever it is, 100 feet. How much are we adding to the nonconformity, Ms. Amberson?
The addition is 166 square feet to a 50.
The whole addition is 166 square feet, right? So we're adding 166 square feet. It's in the back of the house. It's been placed in a way that sort of minimizes the capacity to the extent that we have people who have weighed in on this as neighbors. They're all very much in favor. We're not kind of running into that issue. I think the other issue that we had was that the addition itself, which was a second floor playroom as opposed to a first floor powder room, was also going to have we had a neighbor who believed that it was going to have, and made a pretty good case that it was going to have, a distinctive impact on the light that got to his house, which is not a case here. So I think I'm comfortable with it, and I appreciate Elizabeth Akers-Moore, your perspective, which I think is right. This is really important.
I appreciate it.
Now, with all of that, is somebody like Ms. Akers-Moore maybe even willing to?
I guess after putting you through that, yes, I'm willing to make a motion. And thank you to the board and Elizabeth for entertaining it. And I think it's an important conversation. So I will move that we approve the application for a special permit under section 6.2.13, 7.1.5, and 11.6 of the zoning bylaw to construct a 166 square foot addition on a legally non-conforming lot that exceeds the floor area ratio. The addition will increase the non-conformity so that the lot exceeds the maximum FAR by 222 square feet at 44 Central Street, parcel number 2598, with all the findings we just discussed.
With what Jim just said. I second the motion.
Okay, Ms. Akers-Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Kindermans,
Aye.
Mr. Smith, aye. Thank you very much. Elizabeth Hughes, we should try to see if we can track down this question. I think it's a very intriguing one, so thank you for that.
I will make the request of the town manager.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much. You changed our
Thanks
lives.
all. I don't know what you teach, but you could. I don't know if this is it would be helpful
I
experience.
teach geometry, so maybe this is what we do tomorrow.
Well, maybe you could figure out how to fit this into a smaller area.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You said yes.
We already said yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next. Wow, we're still blasting along here. So our 7:20 hearing is Dennis Fiore for a special permit under section 7.1.3 and 11.6 of the zoning bylaw to construct a 976 square foot detached garage at 309 Sudbury Hill Road. And I think we have somebody speaking for the applicant. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Chairman. Attorney
Okay.
Christopher Alphen, Blattman, Bobrowski, Haverty, and Silverstein. My office is here in Concord. Also with me tonight is the applicant, Dennis, who's on the Zoom call as well, who can add to my comments that I'm about to make. If you don't mind, I'm just going to share my screen.
That'd be fine.
Just so we're all looking at the same thing, do we see the map of the subject structure here?
We see a photo is what we see. Yes.
Yeah, you see a photo. Okay, great.
Okay, you said a map, so just okay.
So we're here before you for a special permit because the pre-existing non-conforming barn was non-conforming for setback, front setback. It provided a 21.3 foot setback where 40 feet is required. We are proposing to replace or reconstruct that barn with a garage that is a modest expansion of that pre-existing barn and an expansion of 176 square feet. And so it's a reconstruction and expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming structure. And that's why we're here for a special permit. I should note that that barn no longer exists. It was demoed back in December of last year. And so we're seeking to reconstruct that pre-existing non-conforming structure that has not yet been abandoned because the 2 years have not passed and because the applicants had no intent of abandoning that pre-existing non-conforming structure. The location really is really necessary. We couldn't fit it in some other location that would meet setback requirements. One, because if we go further up this way, there's a body of water back here, which makes it difficult. And I believe there's also an easement back here, which would make it difficult for us to push this away from the dwelling unit. And then also we couldn't move it somewhere back further here because there's a nice, beautiful garden right here that is part of the architect of the property that wants to remain there. So with that, I'll leave it to Dennis to see if he has any additional comments and maybe give a little bit of history about the property.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Fiore, please go
Okay.
ahead.
Chris,
I'm sorry, you're just gonna, I mean, for the record, you're gonna have to state your name.
oh,
and
yes, excuse me.
address.
Dennis Fiore, 309 Strawberry Hill Road.
Thank you, Mr. Fiore.
Chris is here because we've not done a very good job, as I think the planning staff knows, of following the planning procedures for replacing this garage. And it's actually a barn that held farm equipment. So we want to get back on track if we can. Both my wife and I, some of you may know, have run the Concord Museum, have been in the history business for many years, and purchased this house. We thought when we moved back to Concord, we purchased something historic. But this house appealed to us because it was a reconstructed barn, which gave us some of that feeling that we liked in an older house. And because of this old house involvement in this project, some of you may remember that from the winter of 89-90, when this was this old house project. They decided to bring in all of their expertise on this building. And I'm an avid gardener, and what very much appealed is the fact that Tom Worth, who's a well-known garden designer, designed the cottage garden in front and then the terrace garden off to the side. We've maintained those. So we've maintained a lot of the early plantings that are there, replaced others. And as Chris pointed out, if this building were moved closer to the house, not only would it create shadows, which would not allow us to plant, but we'd have to cut through the middle of the garden that exists there now and take down many of the existing plantings that are there. It would also push it further out into a meadow towards the pond, which some of our neighbors have said to us in back that they prefer that it not go in that direction. I should say, as an aside, I think you've gotten 2 letters from neighbors who approve of this project. Our goal
Yes,
is to.
that's correct.
Our goal is to build a building in the same location because we like the relationship between the tractor shed and the house, as it originally was set up when it was built, probably back in the 1920s. And we plan to keep it as close as possible to that footprint, but making a building that is usable. The tractor shed was going to be turned into a 3-bay garage. It was a 4-bay tractor shed by this old house. They never moved ahead with it because I think they got into a lot of complications. First of all, the building was in horrible condition when they came. This is 30 years later, and it is in not much better condition, despite some repairs to try to keep it going. They were going to block up the front of the building, which faces the house, and come around the back, which meant they would have had to put extensive walling in order to hold up a driveway to come into the back. And then they were going to have to reconstruct the interior in order to allow for 3 bays. And then they'd have to put on a 4 or 5 foot extension in the back because the tractor shed was too shallow to house cars. It was made to house farming equipment, as I mentioned earlier. So they never moved ahead with the project. We kept up the building. We've been here for 10 years. We kept it up to the best of our ability, realizing that it wouldn't last forever. But as we got into our early 70s and figured a garage was a better idea, and then last fall I fell through the floor of the garage. The roof and one corner had fallen in. It became a hazard, and we decided that it really, really had to come down and something else had to go into its place. So again, we're trying to make it conform to what was there. We like that relationship. It'll be in the same sort of color that we had before. It'll be painted red. And we really would like to keep that same relationship and not harm the garden that is there and rebuild it pretty much as it was.
Thank you, Mr. Fiore. Let me just ask a technical question here of either you or Mr. Alpert. So just to make sure I have it right. So the nonconformity is the distance from the road. Is that the point here?
That's correct. Yeah. The front setback was the nonconformity. We're not increasing that nonconformity. That nonconformity is still going to remain as the same. And there are no additional nonconformities being created by the replacement garage.
Right, but otherwise the looks like the land here is, there's no other nonconformities. It's plenty, got all this frontage and area and all that it would need, so that if you were simply because it's torn down, if you put up another garage that for whatever reason was however many feet it has to be back, I can't remember the number, then you could do that on that property in theory.
Correct. That is correct. Yep.
All right, I'm going to ask if there are other questions or comments from other members of the board. I know Mr. Swaim has suggested he had some questions prior to the meeting, so we'll let him maybe start if he wants. I don't think we're hearing you, Tom. Sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry.
There you go.
I am assuming that the garage, the barn, was not taken down, excuse me, as a result of a building inspector or the Board of Health saying it's unsafe. And therefore, I'm concerned that it's a voluntary demolition. And under the case of Berliner versus Feldman, Chris, you may know the case, it's 363 Mass 767, a 1973 case. As I read that case, and I had this when I was practicing all the time, a couple times, that if you tore down a non-conforming use voluntarily, that you then lost the benefit of the non-conforming protection. And so I'm curious whether that doesn't apply to this case.
That doesn't apply to this case for two reasons. Number one, there needs to be an intent to abandon. There was never an intent by the applicant to abandon the use or the non-conforming structure. He just didn't realize that he should have got a special permit before he demoed the barn. But there was never an intent to abandon the non-conforming structure. Secondly, the case law has kind of changed on that, and it's changed the case law on that. Obviously, that case was the one that you cited was one that I'm familiar with about abandoning, and there was a interpretation of whether there was abandoned or not, and it's very fact specific. But there's recent case law, and I cited my letter, the Gilden letter case in Nantucket, where the judge in the land court, which was held up in the appeals court, said, well, you can destruct something and then rebuild it in somewhere else, and that's not an abandonment. That is just simply conforming with your grandfathered use, and you have not lost it because you did not have the intent and you have not made the voluntary action to abandon that non-conforming use or that non-conforming structure. So it's very fact specific, but this is one of the cases where the facts say that there was no abandonment. You need to make a finding that there was an abandonment, and in order to make a finding that there was an abandonment, you have to find that there was an intent to abandon, or find that there was 2 years. And of course, there wasn't 2 years. It's only been since December.
Do you think Berliner held that you had to have intent?
Well, yeah, I think that, well, first of all, number one, that case is, that's kind of the old way of doing it. The Gilden case is sort of the new interpretation of it, where you do need to find an intent of an abandonment. But again, it's been a while since I've read that case, and I believe that was very fact specific about whether there was actually an intent to abandon that structure or not. So, but it's been a while since I read that case.
to that point, I was also very curious about this, Tom, and Glidden, I mean, I didn't go too far into it. It does seem to be fact specific, and the facts do differ a little bit in terms of what was in the zoning bylaw about the timing in which you were supposed to get a special permit before demolition. But what I did do was go back to the NRC meeting, and it was clearly stated by the applicant that they intended to rebuild it. So sorry, I stepped by accident. Anyway, in terms of intent, I'm very satisfied that this was always the intent was to rebuild it.
Yeah, look, if you lost the intent, if there was a moment where it was, demoed, and then he lost the intent, at one point in time, he did not have the intent to rebuild, and then a week later he changes your mind, that would be an abandonment. But here, that's not the case. It was, while he was demoing it, he always had the intent to reconstruct it. So it is kind of a unique situation because normally if somebody has that in mind, that before I demo it, I better get the permits to make sure that I can reconstruct it. That's normally what happens in the course of things, but that's not what happened in this particular case.
Elizabeth Hughes.
I also think that Inspector Paul Creedon also had a conversation with the building commissioner about the structural integrity of this barn. And while there may not have been a formal notice from the building inspections division or the Board of Health for safety reasons, I think Mr. Creedon can speak to the structural integrity of the barn, and if one had not been issued, one probably would have been issued fairly soon, but I'll let Paul speak to that.
Yeah, correct, Elizabeth. We saw some photographs of the structure, existing structure, and it was quite in a decrepit state. In my opinion, going to fall down at any time anyway. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Mr. Creedon. Elizabeth, your hand is still up. Nope, it's down.
Mm-hmm.
You fooled me. Let's see. Did I ever open up for public comment, or did we just get it? I didn't think I have. Let me just open this up for public comment to make sure that I've ticked that box. I'm not seeing anything. I'm kind of curious as to what Galaxy Tab A is, but I guess it's a phone. All right. So I'm trying to learn. I think I'm closing public comment at this stage. And so any further discussion, I think certainly it seems straightforward, and I guess the question and given the comments from Mr. Alpern, I'm going to ask Mr. Swain if he's got any other thoughts, but it does appear that that in the friendly confines of the town of Concord, there were lots of reasons why you should take down this thing so that you didn't have to get didn't have the building inspector ordering you to take it down, but but nevertheless, there's where we are. Tom, do you have any further thoughts?
I don't think so. If I'd known that the building inspector looked at it and said, hey, it's got to come down, I think I might have had a different opinion to start with.
Ravi or Theo?
Just a quick clarification. I heard the statement that there was no increase to the nonconformity. Looking at the footprint, it's obviously a bigger footprint, and part of that is within the setback. But is the point being made that the closest point of the structure is going to be no closer to the road than the current or the former barn?
That's correct. The setback, the non-conforming setback is remaining the same.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, given the situation here, I'm not too worried about it once we get past the issue of whether the barn, there was an abandonment. And I think Elizabeth Akers Moore was very helpful to have gone back to the NRC, because it appears at the time there's a clear statement, if I understood you right, that he was going to take it down, but he was going to rebuild it.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
So, okay. All right. I'm certainly prepared to hear a motion.
I will make a motion to approve a special permit on the section 713 and 11.6 of the zoning bylaw to construct a 976 square foot detached garage at 309 Strawberry Hill Road.
Do we have a second? Maybe we do. I think you were maybe on mute.
I
No?
keep muting because I have all these kids in my house and then I forget to unmute. Second.
Okay. Mr. Kindermans.
Aye.
Ms. Akers Moore.
Aye.
Mr. Smith, aye. Good. We have to get a high sign or something.
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, both
you very
Mr.
much.
Fiore and
Thank you.
Mr. Alpern for your patience in getting to this. All right.
Thank you very much.
I will just note for the record that that case that Tom cited was actually written by Herb Wilkins, who's a neighbor of mine. So, I mean, what goes around comes around, apparently. In any event, we're going to move on to the last hearing for what I hope is the last hearing for the night. Kevin Hurley, thank you for your patience for a special permit under section 2.3.4, 4.2.2.1, and 11.6 of the zoning bylaw to extend Residence C zoning district by 30 feet into Residence B, and for a two-family dwelling at 23 to 25 Lang Street. I'm hoping somebody can explain exactly what's going on here, but Mr. Hurley, are you there? I see something like Kevin's iPad, so that perhaps is you.
That is me. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Kevin Hurley. Can you hear me?
We can.
I live at 17 Musterfield Road. I'm both the applicant and the owner of the property at 23 and 25 Lang Street. I'm applying under section 2.3.4. Under that section, we're requesting that the board vote to extend the regulations applicable to the Residence C district 30 feet into the Residence B district. If Elizabeth could bring up the site plan, it might be helpful.
I think she's trying. Ah, here we go. Thank you.
So, and Elizabeth, if you could shrink that a little bit, just to give you a brief history about this property. The front of the property is today known as 25 Lang Street, and the front of the property was built in 1920 as a church. The back of the property is known today as 23 Lang Street, and that was an addition that the church put on in 1955. In 1976, the church sold the property and the new owner obtained a special permit from the Board of Appeals to convert the use of the property to a two-family structure, which is the current use of the property. And in 2005, there was a freestanding garage built at the left rear corner, and there was a carport built to the left of the main building itself. Gotcha. The property consists of 17,537 square feet of land. About 56% of that land is currently zoned Residence C. 44% of the property is zoned Residence B. And Elizabeth just put the arrow down the boundary line. 30 feet to the left of that, we show the requested extension. If that extension is made, then 14,755 square feet of the property, or 84% of the property, would be subject to the Residence C district regulations. We have frontage, 74 feet of frontage in the Residence C district, 33 feet of frontage in the Residence B district. We're proposing to remove the garage, remove the carport, remove a couple of other elements on the property, and make some minor additions to the back of the unit at 23 and make minor modifications to the unit that is at 25 Lang Street. The Historic Districts has approved the plans. They did that on March 16th. And on April the 5th, the Planning Board voted to recommend to your board that your board grant the special permits as requested. I'll be glad to answer any questions any of the board members may have.
So I guess just for the record, Mr. Hurley, can you take us, so what are the specific advantages that you get by being Residence C as opposed to Residence B here? I just want to make sure we've got it on the record.
I think the biggest advantage is in 2021, town meeting adopted the second paragraph in section 4221 of the zoning bylaw. Under the second paragraph of that section, the Board of Appeals has the ability to grant approval for a two-family structure that is not subject to the space limitations that are set forth in the first paragraph of section 4221. So it allows us a little bit more flexibility in how we handle the site. For instance, if we just applied under the old section, we would keep the garage detached, keep the driveway where it is, and by eliminating the existing garage and attaching it to the house, we get the opportunity to set the driveway much further back from our abutters. I have spoken to the 5 direct abutters of this property, and all of the abutters have indicated to me that they support what we're proposing here. But in part, they will be less impacted by these alterations.
Because just to add to that, because if you attach the garage, you would exceed in the zoning B, you would exceed the space that's permitted. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, because then that becomes part of the 20% that is included. If you detach the garage under the first paragraph in 4221, then that's not part of the 20%.
Right, thank you. That's very helpful, but particularly for the record, I just want to make sure we're clear as to what's going on here. So any other questions, comments, thoughts? Elizabeth, I don't know if you've thought about this at all, Elizabeth Hughes, but are you clear on what we're trying to accomplish here?
Yes, the planning board discussed this last week at their April 5th meeting and was in unanimous support to recommend that the zoning board of appeals allow the extension of the Residence C dimensional provisions 30 feet into the Residence B zone district because it allows better utilization of the site. It allows for the reduction in the amount of impervious pavement. It is an improvement for the direct abutters. And the board was in full support that this remain a two-family given its proximity to Concord Center.
Thank you very
Received that
much.
letter today.
I'm sorry, what was that, Theo?
We received that letter this afternoon.
Yes.
Right.
And Elizabeth, I guess the fact that the very corner of the addition is still slightly over that 30-foot extension doesn't kind of nullify that we're governed by that residency paragraph in 4221.
You're talking about there's a small corner of the, I think it's a, my glasses, I think it's a screened in porch.
It's a small portion, Elizabeth, it's a small portion of the sunroom and a small portion of the garage.
No, the building commissioner and I spoke about this, and specifically spoke with Mr. Hurley before he filed. Did not feel that there was any issues with that, because in either Residence C or Residence B zone district, you can have a sunroom, you can have a garage. The structure meets the required setbacks for both districts. So we did not feel that that was any type of zoning issue.
Right. So the part that's in Residence B is not a two-family dwelling, it's just a garage / sunroom, which
Correct.
is fine. Okay, that makes sense.
That's very helpful. Thank you to everyone. Thank you, Elizabeth. I just want to make sure we were clear here. There's our vast audience is reduced to a relatively small number of boxes on my screen, but I'm going to ask if there are any, is there any public comment? All right, seeing none, I'm getting into practice. I'm going to close the public comment portion of the public meeting hearing. Any further discussion? Anybody want to make a motion? You know, once I will just note that dealing with applicants like Mr. Hurley, who I think was a former, were you a former town planner, Kevin?
Yes, I was.
Yes, it's always a pleasure to have things sort of set up according to the rules. So thank you again.
Mr. Hurley was the town planner, the first town planner.
The first town planner. Oh my God.
That just shows how old I am.
Probably shows how old all of us are.
I agree. I feel like this is a sensible plan and it's been well vetted by many great minds besides ours. So I'm happy to make a motion unless there are other comments.
I'd just like to add one thing. I sent a revised project narrative that was dated February 24th, revised April the 6th. And in that, I requested that the board include 3 conditions. And I'd like to see those conditions included. And then the water department had a couple of conditions that it wanted the board to include.
Okay, let me see if I got the February 24th.
And there should be one that's revised April 6th.
Okay.
Oh,
I think Heather Senate may have sent that out today. It may have come out this afternoon.
The
water narrative revised. It's the revised narrative, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I got it. Yes, I did read that. Thank you. I just, the way you said it, I was looking for something else on my own iPad here.
So Mr. Chairman,
yep.
So I apologize that I did not have the opportunity to read these, and so maybe Mr. Hurley can explain. I have somewhat of an issue with conditions that allow for blanket modifications. Not so much if a structure is getting smaller, but I do have issues where the gross floor area can be increased. But Kevin, if I'm reading this correctly and quickly, you're talking about allowing modifications to the plans based on these 2 alternative options.
It would be, in case we run into some situation, the existing FAR is 3,805. The proposed FAR is 4,922. Under that proposed condition 2B, I'm asking that we be allowed to increase that by as much as 3%. And 3% is 148 square feet. And that's just a matter of, having some flexibility during the final design and permitting process to change things, but not to change things in excess of 148 square feet, would still leave us well below the maximum allowed FAR. The maximum allowed FAR is 5,436.
Oh, 3% of the sum of the gross floor area, blah, blah, blah. So what I'm hearing, I'm sorry, but I just jumping in, so the problem is that one has to do a mathematical, or the issue is one has to do a mathematical calculation to figure out what this is. And what you're telling us is it's not more than 150 square feet, essentially.
Right. And another way of doing it is not to say 3%, but say not more than 145 square feet.
So the issue I have is that the board's decisions, ever since I can remember, the board's decisions are very specific about the plans that are approved and the square footages that are approved. And the proposed language is not something that the board has that I'm aware of. I can't remember things very well these days, but is not a method of flexibility that the board has used to my knowledge at all. I understand the flexibility as far as the optional plans that are available and listing those different plans as options, and it would be up to the building commissioner to make the determination when a project has minor changes between the granting of the special permit and the issuance of the building permit, whether something is in substantial conformance with the special permit. To have just a blanket condition allowing up to an additional 145 square feet is not something that the board has traditionally done in the past.
So I think I can make it easy and agree with Elizabeth and say, I would like to withdraw my request for paragraph 2, subparagraph B, and be governed the way Elizabeth just outlined.
Which if I heard that right, meant that there's sort of two alternative plans of which either one of them is acceptable to us. Is that what I thought I heard you say, Elizabeth?
Correct. But I'm reading, can you explain your proposed condition 3, Kevin?
3. My biggest concern is that we have 2 units. The front at 25 is going to take very little work to be done. And yet more than 50% of the proposed landscaping is for the back of the unit. So I'd like to have the ability to get a certificate of occupancy for 25 when the work complies with all the requirements that the building department has under state law. But with respect to the landscaping, I'd like to not have to finish the landscaping until 23 was much further completed. It will take a much longer period of time. And then if the weather didn't permit, I could still get an occupancy permit for 23 as long as I posted a guarantee to complete the landscaping. And in the past, I've posted funds with the town to guarantee completion of landscape work.
So we already have a standard condition regarding that. And it's a provision that the town has used numerous times for residential and commercial projects. So understanding the parameters that Kevin is asking, I would rather utilize our standard conditions and just modify it in a way that makes it explicit that the occupancy for 25 can be issued and before the occupancy permit for 23 and the completion of the landscaping, there is already a provision that allows for bonds to be posted due to weather and inclement weather.
That would satisfy me.
Okay.
But what you're basically saying, Elizabeth, I believe, is that I could get an occupancy for 25, even if the landscaping was completed. But then we'd have to address completion of the landscaping before 23 or work under the terms of the standard condition.
Correct.
Right.
The standard condition basically says the same thing you're saying, but in a format that we use.
That'd be fine.
All right. If it's possible for this to get any more complicated, how are we doing so far?
Maybe. Are we, what, Elizabeth, what about the rest of those requested conditions?
Well, the
two, yeah.
item one just basically is assists us, but it's it'll be worded similar to that. That's already in your standard conditions. It just lists the approved plans. So it'll go through and it'll list the approved plans in a similar fashion. As far as allowing the modifications, which would be condition 2, I have no issues with item 2A or 2B. Those would have been standard protocol that we already work with the building commissioner on if somebody has some changes that they'd like to make, so long as they're found in substantial conformance. But if Kevin feels better actually having this language in there, I don't have any issues with that.
And 2C?
I have no issues with 2A or 2C.
Oh, or C. Okay, sorry. 2A or 2C, and 2B would just be putting the two alternate plans.
Correct. I don't think 2B is needed so long as the alternative plans are listed under item 1.
Okay, and then 3 would just be standard conditions.
Correct.
Okay. Should I try to make a motion then?
Go for it.
All right. Oh man, oh, no, I gotta find my thing. All right, so I move that we approve the application of Kevin Hurley for a special permit under sections 2.3.4, 4.2.2.1, and 11.6 of the zoning bylaw to extend Residence C zoning district by 30 feet into Residence B, and for a 2-family dwelling at 23 to 23 Lang Street, parcel number 1284, subject to standard conditions and the language set forth in his, what is this? Letter of February 24th, revised April 6th, 2022. So 2A and C. Did I do it right?
And water and sewer also had a couple of conditions.
Oh, what was the water and sewer? I don't see those, sorry.
Yeah,
Water and comments, sorry.
Was it water and sewer?
Yes, it's the memo from Water and Sewer from, I think it's dated yesterday.
April 13th, yep. And subject to those conditions in that April 13th memo from the Concord Public Works Water and Sewer Division.
Second.
Terrific. Ms. Akers-Moore.
Aye.
Mr. Kindermans.
Aye.
Mr. Smith, aye. Thank you all. 10 minutes of 10.
Made it before 10. It's good.
So I got home 5 minutes before this, so I think I'm gonna go have dinner now.
Sounds good.
Unless
Thanks,
there's
everyone.
anything more, Elizabeth Hughes.
Just adjourn the meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, do we have, so on for our May agenda on the 12th of May is, since that one hearing that we extended goes, is that's the only thing on the agenda at the moment? Is that
No,
what
you have 2 other items on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
So you only have 3 items on the agenda.
Was
Okay,
that
well-
virtual still, or was that?
That is at the pleasure of the chair.
I think that we said that we were gonna do virtual through May, and then we were gonna decide. Is I believe what we said. So if we didn't say that before, that sounds like perfect to me at this point. Because
Sounds
who
good.
knows? I
It
mean, we
sounds
have
right.
another spike in New England, right? So
Yes,
yeah.
up 40%, I believe, as of today.
Goody. All right. Thank you. Adjourned, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks
Right.
all for hanging in.